This is the best way to play Illari in Overwatch 2. Illari's middling sustain, range, mobility and utility are made up for by the high damage she deals in her gun and in her ultimates. As a result, look to control and utilize key angles on high grounds that put you in the best position to get the most out of your gun. Your healing turret can be used in duels, as a peeling tool, or as additional healing for your core. Either way, make sure it's out of enemy LOS. Use your outburst to reach high ground or escape danger, and use your ultimate to slow down a rush or to initiate your own. Illari's gun, Elon Musk's next project, makes Illari either fire out a beam of healing that does 120 healing per second for up to 3 seconds before it needs to recharge. Alternatively, her gun deals 75 damage per shot and 112.5 on headshots with full charge. The fall off begins at 30 meters and ends at 50, and the gun takes 1 second to fully charge. The most difficult thing with Illari's gun is the range and distance that you should be playing. You want to be within range to heal your team, but you also want to play split and be on angles in order to leverage your very high damage potential. So how do you know which one to do? Well, in short, try and leverage your damage instead of your healing. You do have a healing turret after all, but the slightly more complex answer is that it mostly depends on your other supports. For example, if you're playing Illari Zen or Illari Mercy, supports that will typically be supporting and enabling flankers, that's when you might want to play a little closer to your tank instead of going full DPS mode. And the opposite would be true if you're playing with Ana or Baptiste. But I'll go more in depth on that in the last section. Before I continue, I'd like to mention that I do private coaching and will be soon joining Uscrim. If you'd like some of the best coaching out there, especially on Illari, I highly recommend you click the link in the description and or shoot me a DM on Discord. Trust me, I don't bite. In terms of your healing, since I mostly think that this is secondary to Illari's kit, due to the limited range and the limited timing, you'll typically use the healing when your tanks are under intense pressure and need the burst. For example, say you're on King's or first point attack and you're playing on this nice off angle here on high grounds. If your tank pushes in and needs the healing, that's when you can drop down and give them that burst. Alternatively, if you're playing in hotel looking for a kill, you would do the same thing. Maybe even using your dash 2 in the process. Very rarely would you just be stacking main, heal bot on your tank. Alternatively, you can also heal teammates who are taking that flank or angle with you. In short, you're not only taking the angle, but you're supporting any of your teammates who might want to take it too. Aside from that, there's not too much more to your healing. Just make sure you don't overheat it, because you won't be able to use it for over 3 seconds. As for your damage, most of the value will come down to how you position, so there's not too much to add here. I will say that trigger discipline is really important, because your gun isn't forgiving. Take the extra half a second to readjust your crosshairs and land those pinpoint shots, otherwise you're not going to be doing much on Illari. Illari's first ability, the free healing, makes Illari deploy a healing pylon that does 40 healing every tick, and over time it will deal 50 healing per second. The turret has a total of 150 HP and a cooldown of 8 seconds unless it's getting attacked, in which case it becomes 12 seconds. Most importantly, the turret has a 15 meter range, which you need to be utilizing. Let's start off with some vital micro with your heal turrets. Because the turret technically has an infinite range, this is going to be a large chunk of your overall healing, despite it not seeming like much. You need to maximize the turret's lifespan with 2 things, range and cover. 15 meters is as far as your standard heal beam. It's also the distance of Moira Spray too. Use it. For example, on King's Row, planting the turret high up on the hotel around the corner will ensure that the enemy team will have to put a lot of resources in destroying your turrets instead of just seeing it out in open space and then destroying it. Here's another example on Lijiang Gardens, where the turret reaches almost anyone playing dojo side. Do be aware that your turret noticeably protrudes, so have some distance from the corner that you're placing it. For example, this turret on Lijiang might look like it's around the corner, but as you can see, the enemy team can clearly destroy it from a safe distance and from a safe angle. In terms of actual usage, there's 3 main uses. The first is to hold space. In other words, it's a more broad use to make up for your lack of healing when you're busy dealing damage. The examples that have just been shown are good cases. But there is more nuance to it, which is making sure you reposition the turret as the fight evolves. For example, say you're on Route 66 first point defense and your team are holding this corner, so you decide to place the turret around the corner. It's a fairly decent position. However, if the enemy team turn the corner, you need to reposition that turret ASAP, because even if it takes 1 HP worth of damage, that cooldown is going to be extended even after you destroy the turret. And it's not just for defensive repositioning, it's for aggressive ones too. What if you wanted to rotate from the gas station because let's say you had your ultimates? Then you'd want to make sure you would put the turret next to you on high ground to help you control it and hold that vital space. The best Illari players won't just autopilot and keep their turret in one spot. They'll constantly move it according to how the team fight flows and how they dynamically move across the map. I can't stress how important this is. The second use of your turret is to duel. For example, if you're fighting for this angle on Route 66, you can plop down your heal turret and then win the duel. This could either be for yourself or for a teammate who's taking the flank. You would just simply toss up the turret. And the last use is for peel. If someone jumps you or a teammate and they need the extra healing, or you're just out of range to heal them, tossing your turret could be a lifesaver. There is an additional niche use, which is to use the hitbox of the turret to block damage and win a duel, but that's pretty uncommon. Illari's second ability, Social Distancing, launches Illari in the direction you're moving. It deals 10 damage to enemies within the 8.5 meter radius and is on a 7-second cooldown. Before I move on to usage, I'll cover the basic movements. To get the most verticality with Illari, stand still, jump and hold down your shift key. Alternatively, if you want more horizontal movement, just tap the shift button. There's two main uses to your Outburst. The first is to use it as a failsafe to escape danger and run away from dives. This is quite similar to how you'd use Sojourn's Power Slide, Echo's Flight, or even Asher's Coach Gun. You first take an aggressive position, then if you need to leave, you pop your escape cooldown. And this is when you tap the shift button instead of holding it to get more distance. Alternatively, just like Power Slide or Flight, you can use the vertical mobility to gain high ground or angles you previously couldn't have gone before. You can also use it to dash to teammates to heal them, or to dash into enemies in order to initiate a duel or to finish them off. Illari's ultimate, the Supernova, makes Illari fire out a ball of solar energy that deals 5 damage on direct hit, 50 damage on splash, and after the ball explodes, 120 damage. Enemies hit by the ball are also significantly slowed for 7 seconds, and during this, Illari can also fly like Sigma in his gravitic flux. Speaking of Sigma in his flux, the most overlooked aspect of your ultimate is the mobility you gain from it. Use the flight to reposition yourself and move to places where you couldn't be otherwise, without having to use your outburst. This means you can be in a great aggressive position and use that outburst defensively, as talked about prior. In terms of the ultimate itself, there's two main uses, aggressive and defensive. I'll start with the obvious, being aggressive. With your ultimate, you can pop it in duels to win a duel, pop it on a tank to blow them up, or pop it on the enemy backline if your team are pressuring them, or if you just want to take them on yourself, which is completely fine. The defensive use to your ultimate is using it as a kiting tool against rush, same way as you'd use flux. If your team are getting walked on by a Ryan or a Winston rush comp, you can utilize the slow from your ultimate to punish the enemy team heavily. And because rush teams are quite clumped up, you can definitely catch multiple targets. In terms of other things to note, make sure you pop your ultimate as fast as possible to return back to using your normal gun. Your captive sun has a massive 8 meter radius, so you shouldn't miss unless the enemy uses a mobility cooldown. Also, do note that you can be hacked or stunned out of your ultimate too, just like Flux, so use cover and be aware of cooldowns that can stop you. And lastly, not only can you combo your ultimate with other ults like Zarya's Grav or Arisa's Terror Surge, but you can also combo it with normal cooldowns like a Winston jumping in or a ball slamming in.
Here. Yo, you slamming. I'm gonna ult and you slam, alright, Audie? 3, 2, 1, go. Go to the whole team. Oh my god! What?
Now onto Illari's playstyle, positioning, and compositional synergies. I'll start off with your playstyle first. Honestly, it's not that complicated. You will likely play soft off angles most of the time, being within range to dash to your tank if they need the burst of healing. But you'll also look to move and rotate to more aggressive positions to get value out of your gun on Illari. Here's an example on New Queen Streets. Say you're coming back from spawn and you need to touch the bot before it caps the points. A mediocre Illari would just be healing a tank, shooting main, maybe placing a turret on main too, and overall, just not doing much. A good Illari would flank through the left side room and look for picks on the enemy backline. You can even plop down your healing Pylon too to help support your angle and then pop your outburst if someone like a Genji just dashed straight onto you. Here's a clip of me explaining this with Ana, and it's the exact same example with the exact same principle. Where could you move to land another big nade, essentially?
Through the room.
Through the room,
and
yeah?
then, yeah.
Yeah, like
and
just
to the
walk through
enemy
here,
team, yeah.
Yeah, and then like toss a nade through here, right? Or if they're trying to back up, or then they keep S keying out, and again you can play a bit more aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
And then go through here, right? And that's, you know, if they're going back out. Again, imagine if you were here, like this is crazy value, right? Like a nade here, like that soldier dies immediately, that Ana dies. Honestly, and your Winston can probably keep walking forward. He probably doesn't even use primal. Yeah, you definitely confirm a kill if you like flank through here and land a 3-man nade. But let's go a step further. Some Illari guides have stated that you should never hard flank on Illari. I strongly disagree. On screen, you'll see a clip showing why. Here's 2 simple things to be able to successfully get off your hard flanks. The first is timing. You need to be timing these hard flanks late into the team fights, because nobody is going to be looking at you. All the attention is going to be on the front line. And as you can see in the clip, the tanks are fighting on point, and nobody is thinking about an Illari flanking from behind. Remember, the more aggressive your flank, the later it needs to be timed. The second factor is mobility. In other words, you're more able to hard flank if you're playing against a team that has low mobility heroes. If they're running Tracer, Sombra, Doomfist, because those heroes have very high mobility, they can immediately pounce onto you and destroy you up close. But against low mobility comps, they just can't reach you if you hard flank. And the third sub-factor is composition. Obviously, if you're playing Illari Zen, you're going to be less able to hard flank because your tank might need the healing. Now onto the positional section of the guides. I have 4 rules that I use for every hero, and here's an example of me showing it on Esperanza. The first rule is cover. Pretty simple. Cover just means that you can stop taking damage at any time. The second rule is LOS, or line of sight. Again, pretty simple. You need to see the enemy team and your own team too. The third rule is distance from angles. This just means you have plenty of distance so you can react to a flanker sneaking up on you. And the last rule is rotations. I've spoken about this before, but rotations just mean moving up to a more aggressive or defensive position when needed. Now onto the compositional part of the guides. Where should you play Illari? Well, in short, don't play her with mobile dive heroes like Sombra or Tracer. They're just too mobile, so you can't heal them either with your normal gun or with the turrets. You also shouldn't play her with rush comps. Rush comps require a Lucio, and Lucio Illari just doesn't have much healing or utility, hence why Moira, Ana, or especially Baptiste are much better options. Her healing is an area of effect too. She also isn't great in straight up poke comps. She does a third of the damage she normally does from 50 meters away, meaning on maps like Junkertown, she can be tough to run. With that being said, she isn't awful in poke comps. Aside from that, I'd say she's best in Pokeball hybrids or Poke Dive hybrids. And considering in ranked, you're running hybrids most of the time, you shouldn't be too worried about your comp. Now onto Illari's backline synergies. Illari Ana. One of her best pairings in my opinion, as is the case with Ana Kiriko. Pretty flexible in most situations, just missing out that mobility from Kiriko, or that sustain from Brigitte, so you better be getting value from your gun. Illari Baptiste. A good pairing if you're running a Pokeball hybrids. Baptiste can cover a lot of the healing and dish out his own damage too, giving you more freedom to take those angles talked about before. Again, just misses out the utility that Lucio or Kiriko can provide, or that sustain that Brig provides, which you might need against dive. Illari Brigitte, a duo relatively low in utility, but makes up for it in sustain and damage. You're unlikely to see this over Ana Brig for example, because nade is just crazy utility, and your gun is just much more flexible, but again, this isn't a bad pairing in hybrid comps. Illari Kiriko. Likewise to Illari Ana, one of her best pairings in my opinion. Kiriko makes up for Illari's lackluster utility, and both don't have any major stat deficits, as you can see. Suffers from the same setbacks discussed prior. Illari Lifeweaver. Best for any kind of dive hybrids or variation. Lifeweaver can easily support the flankers due to the automated healing, and its healing per second is fairly respectable. As Illari, you'll make up for his lack of damage, but unfortunately, this is a fairly low utility duo. Illari Lucio. Talked about this before, but just an unrealistic pairing because of the inconsistent healing. It can work if your team doesn't require much healing, and if you're running something like Illari Soldier, you can comfortably support your soldier on the angle. Illari Mercy. This can be a bit tricky to work around if your tank requires a high amount of healing, but this can be a decent Pokeball hybrids. Your Mercy boosts your DPS, and you support your tank when you need to. Illari Moira. Similar to Illari Baptiste, just lacks the utility that Baptiste mainly provides. Not much more to add. Illari Zen. Best for poke or poke dive variations. Sure, the healing is low, and you do have fall off, so again it isn't great on those long sightline maps, but if you find a flank, support your poke DPS on angles, and dish out your own damage within fall off, this can be quite decent. Not great against dive though. And that's it for the guides. Shout out to my channel members, XBenny, Broken by 50%, Ushi Up, Wix, Craig, Chris Jones, and Susfring. Until next time.